The Astra Militarum Codex leaks have stepped up a notch, with entire datasheets appearing on the internet now. Lord Solar and the Rough Riders have been spotted in full, and even just putting their two simple datasheets together makes for some insane combos and some absolutely ridiculous melee damage. Let's take a look at what we've got. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today we're taking a look at another couple of guard leaks, this time a couple of datasheets that have appeared online for the Attilan Rough Riders and Lord Solar Leontus. A lot of their contents confirms previous things from the Mordian Glory leaks, but we've got a bunch of other interesting clues and bits on here, plus it looks like their damage output is going to be absolutely crazy. I feel like both the Rough Riders and the Lord Solar are going to be very popular in competitive lists. They do look rather terrifying. So first up, let's start with the New Guard Cavalry then. The Attilan Rough Riders have their new knightly looking horses and are confirmed to be a fast attack unit, squad size 5 to 10, and their 5 power level does tally well with the rumoured 20 points per model that we had previously. Their keywords make for some interesting reading. They're Astra Militarum, Cavalry, Corps, Platoon, and Regimental. It is interesting that the regiment keyword seems to have just gone away completely. They have the keyword Regimental and Attilan Rough Riders, but it looks like on the actual datasheet there's no need to designate your army as any one keyworded regiment. I guess that would likely mean that for the vast majority of units in the Codex, you don't nominate them as Kaschan or Cadian per se. I guess the units that will get those keywords are things like the unique ones, like say Kazakin or New Creed. Their stat line from Mordian Glories leaks had some questions as to how many attacks they got and what weapon skill they have, but it does appear to be the strongest version of what they might have had. They move 12 inches, hit on 3s, hit on 4s at range, strength and toughness of 4, have 2 wounds, 2 attacks, leadership 6 or 7 on the sergeant, and a 4+ save. Overall, it looks like a really quite solid stat line for 20 points. The movement's really good, and it looks like Guard have really got some fast and very hard-hitting melee. I'd rate their durability as just kind of so-so, really. It's not going to be too much effort to remove an entire unit of these, whether you're firing at them with damage 2 weapons, small arms, or anti-tank guns, but really I think it's their damage output that is just crazily standout. I feel like enemies are really going to fear the names of the Rough Riders. Speaking of their weapons, it appears that each rider is equipped with a las gun, las pistol, and frag grenades, and it does appear that the las gun profile is confirmed to be no major changes, nothing weird like auto wounds on 6s baked in or anything. They are your standard issue small arms, and I guess that does make sense. Hardly the most exciting part of this model though. First up we have the fearsome hunting lance, which is very scary indeed. These guys just look like they're thoroughly efficient into just about every single target that you could charge. When you attack, you get to select one of 2 lance tips to hit the enemy with, and you either get to choose the frag or the melter. It doesn't look like there's any requirement as to actually having had to charge to use the lances. You are fine to use them even if you got charged yourself. The only difference that having charged makes is that you get an extra +2 strength on top of the profiles for the lances. In any case, the profile for the Hunting Lance frag tip is Strength User, AP -1 and Damage 1, and each successful hit that you make with the lance grants you 2 extra hits, so effectively you're getting 3 hits for every one that you land. There's no requirement to hit on 6s or anything, as I misspoke in the last video. It is just literally every hit that gets that, and on a 3+ to boot. That means that just on average, each rider is slamming home with an average of 4 hits at Strength 6, AP -1 and Damage 1 on the charge, utterly going to blend light infantry when you're only 20 points per model. And then if you're against harder targets, you could be hitting with the melter tip instead. You only get 2 attacks hitting on 3s with that, and that's strength +2, so likely strength 8 when they're charging, AP -4 and a flat damage of 3. Excellent for dealing with anything from medium infantry to tanks. We'll get onto the damage output for those in just a second, but it really is kind of monumental compared with what I would have expected for these new guard horses. They're just incredibly general purpose and hit spectacularly hard for the cost. Otherwise within the unit, it looks like the sergeant also gets to take a power saber apparently for free. That one's strength +1, AP -3 and damage 2 and gives you +1 attack. I think effectively you're usually going to want to use the Hunting Lance instead of that most of the time. It has more strength, AP and damage, but basically that means that you're usually just going to be swinging with this with just one single extra attack on top of whatever he is doing with the Hunting Lance. I guess if it gives him a swing at killing say one more Space Marine as well. Finally there's a special weapon upgrade called the Goad Lance, which replaces the Hunting Lance. This one costs an extra 5 points, and it upgrades you to strength +2, AP -3 and damage 2. That sort of seems like a halfway house between the frag and melter, as you don't have quite as much massive hitting power, but the hits that you do get count as double hits, plus you get 1 mortal wound when the attacks are allocated to vehicles, in addition to normal damage. I'm sure we can do another review of these guys once the full rules come out. At least for 5 points that does look like it could be worth it, but to be honest it looks like they're already hitting spectacularly hard anyway even without it. Otherwise we've got special rules. It looks like a common guard one is going to be called Regimental Tactics. That's one that we haven't had fully clarified yet. It sounds like that might be the custom traits that you get to pick for each unit, though there might well be other stuff bundled up in that as well. Otherwise, besides the +2 strength on the charge, we also have Horse Masters as well. This one allows them to ignore modifiers to move, advance and charge, so that does help out when they're traversing terrain to get to grips with the enemy. Overall it looks like they're a unit that's not really all that hard to kill, but is pretty fast and has some crazy hitting power, better melee than the guard have had in a long time, and even small units of them can make a massive dent in just about anything that they charge into. Speaking of which, I thought it might just be interesting to take a look at the numbers again on just one squad charging with no buffs whatsoever. In a bare-bones squad of 5, which looks like it'll be 100 points, you'd get 11 attacks total, including the extra one for the sergeant, plus the sergeant would get to swing with one extra power sword attack with a damage of 2. If they do get to make the charge rather than the other way round, they unlock the +2 strength, and they kill these numbers of their respective targets. For guardsmen, they wipe out most units with pretty much 16 dead. I guess a cluster of attacks with effectively triple hits at strength 6 and AP -1 will do that. For everything else it makes sense to use the melter tip on this list. The Space Marines get 5 or 6 of them dead. Even on the weediest Marines that's likely made back your points cost for the unit in just a single charge. For Space Marine Terminators that would typically be 3 of them dead. Flat damage 3 works very well against them, as does high AP. For a toughness 7 vehicle you average 12 wounds. So again, that looks like that's most light tanks in the game dead in a single charge, and even if you go against something ridiculously tough like a toughness 8 vehicle with a 5+ invul and -1 damage, something like a Death Guard Plague Burst Crawler, that's still a big 5 wounds there. No slouch at all against such a tough unit to remove. Overall it just looks like every time they make a charge they are going to be trading out incredibly well. For just 100 points they've got a good chance of making that back against almost whatever they charge in a single round of combat, and this is all just on their absolute base things, no things like regimental tactics, fixed bayonets, orders, Lord Solar rerolls, or anything else that they might have going for them. Rough Riders just really do look like they're looking kind of insane at the moment. Maybe it's just a little bit unexpected for Guard Outriders to be apparently hitting like some of the most efficient melee troops in the game without buffs. Moving on though, that's not the only datasheet leak that we've had, as it also appears that we've got the full rules for Lord Solar Leontus as well, the new Supreme Commander himself on his horse, and just looking at the raw stats from this, it does look like he could be in just about auto-include territory for the new guard, and looks like he'd pair spectacularly well with the Rough Riders themselves. In terms of his basic details, he's a power level 9 HQ choice unit that would tally very well with the rumoured points of 180. And for keywords, he does have Supreme Commander, he is of course Cavalry, and a Character Officer, and again has the Regimental keyword. Being a Supreme Commander will make him very easy to field for the guard. It means he isn't going to be competing with HQ slots or anything like that. Statline wise, I believe it's the same as what was rumoured before, a 12-inch move and hits on 2s, Strength 6, Toughness 4, 8 wounds, 6 attacks, Leadership 10, a 3+ save, and a 4+ invul. He's got a specially crafted refractor helm that gives him that 4+ invul, and that also halves incoming damage, so usually anything that's a flat damage of 2 is just going to be spectacularly bad at killing him. That stat line's all around pretty solid, fairly similar to something like a Space Marine Captain for example, and in combat he'll be swinging with Conquest, Strength 6, AP -3, and damage 2. The blade of Mr. Macarius still does sterling work, it seems. It's going to do a number on elite infantry, but he isn't going to be the sort of hard-hitting combat character that's just taking down battle tanks left, right and centre. Otherwise, that pistol is called Soul's Righteous Gaze, a 12-inch pistol with 2 shots, Strength 8, AP 3 and Damage 3, so a couple more anti-tank shots there. Seem pretty handy for killing medium infantry as well. Really though, I think that the reason that you want to take this guy are his special rules. Again, it looks like he has Regimental Tactics and Voice of Command. Looks like he will be acquiring whatever regiment trait you choose for your regiment to hail from, I guess. Though I suppose there might be some sort of specific exception for commanders like him in the core rules. Otherwise though, his buffs do look very, very good. He's got that collegiate Astralex rule that Games Workshop previewed, which is the one where you can choose to either change a secondary reactively to your opponent or gain a command point. Even if you just choose to gain a command point from him, it still looks very nice, particularly in Nephilim starting the game with more CP is very valuable. Then he's got a 6-inch aura of reroll 1s to hit and wound for core units. It sounds like core is going to apply to most of the infantry and heavy weapon teams, but not those field ordnance batteries. And it looks like the only vehicles that get core will probably be the Sentinels, though of course we'll have to wait for full leaks to that effect. Then, perhaps one of the biggest reasons to take him is his command phase reroll buff. You get to select one unit that's either a core unit, a character unit, or a battle tank, and then that unit can reroll hit rolls. It does look like this is actually somewhat limited. You're not going to be able to apply this to the biggest and baddest guard things around like Baneblades. I strongly suspect that they're not going to have the battle tank keyword. That'll be for the Dawn and the Ross, I'd guess. But even then, 4 rerolls to hit on a Ross is really quite big. They do have some very scary weaponry. What's more though, if you happen to select a core unit for that, you get to reroll hit rolls and wound rolls for them. So we're going to make things like infantry squads in Kazakin pretty savage, and at least from the leaked rules that we know so far, it does sound like Rough Riders might genuinely be one of the strongest targets that we could possibly apply that to. They've got ridiculously threatening melee, re-rolling all hits and wounds is just going to make that so much better. Finally, if saving CP and awesome rerolls weren't enough, it does seem that he is just about the god of orders from the Imperial Guard. He can issue 3 different types, knows all the orders from the Prefectus, Regimental, and Mechanized orders. It looks like there's 6 in each, so that's just an astounding array of flexibility there, and it means that he could be subbing in for a tank commander or something, issuing orders to the Lehman Rosses if it made sense. What's more, it sounds like he's got even more flexibility than the standard issuers of those orders. Apparently he can issue regimental orders to auxiliar and officers, which sounds like it isn't normally going to be a thing. He could maybe have Ogrins and things take aim maybe, for +1 to hit and extra AP, which sounds quite nice on those Ripper guns, or maybe have Bulgrin get an extra +1 to hit and extra AP from fixed bayonets. For mechanized orders, he can also apparently issue them to vehicle officers and super heavies as well. So you could, for example, have reroll 1s to hit on a Baneblade from him, while he's giving his command phase rerolls to something completely different. Overall, even among other buffing characters, this guy looks like he's going to be on a completely different level. He's just going to have so many different options for buffs to choose from every turn between 3 different tables, and having all those options on the table is just incredibly powerful when he's supporting a battle line. He's even going to be able to get them where he needs to as well, due to being pretty fast. Just on the face of that, it does look like Lord Solar Leontus will be gracing a whole load of competitive tables for the guard. Unless there are other absolutely astounding things in the Codex, I feel like similar to some units like Abaddon the Despoiler and Morven Val, he's probably going to be included in just about every guard list until things significantly change for him. Even if he's something like 200 points, I think for all those abilities, he does look absolutely auto-include. Finally, just seeing as we have both datasheets, I think it's kind of interesting to think what could happen if we put them together. They're both on horses with good movement, and particularly for those command phase rerolls and things, it does look like the Lord Solar could be very good at just juicing up a squad of Rough Riders before they charge out and go and bravely try and kill something before likely being killed in return. Even if we just took again a minimum investment Rough Rider squad with no upgrades, give them Lord Solar's 4 rerolls to hit and wound as a core unit, and then use that rumoured fixed bayonets order for +1 to hit and an extra AP on the lance, and their damage output goes absolutely crazy. For guardsmen, you're converting just about every single hit that they might have, you kill 31 of them on average. For Space Marines, you're cutting down entire tactical squads with 9 or 10 of them. For Terminators, you get a crazy 7 of them, that is assuming that they don't have anything like -1 damage or invul saves or anything, but even that number alone is pretty silly. For Toughness 7 vehicles, you probably kill just about any in the game at a 29 wound average. With Toughness 8, you get a 24 wound average, equating to roughly 1 dead knight. And even for the hardest targets, things like Toughness 8, 5 plus invul and -1 damage, are still 10 wounds there. Still a sizable chunk taken out of some of the toughest things around. Overall, I think it's just hard to imagine a case where a couple of units of Rough Riders wouldn't be a good idea, just as a lurking countercharge threat, if nothing else. Admittedly, they might get shot down quite easily if they do decide to go charging out into the open and just get lit up by the enemy anti-infantry guns before they can convert that damage, but even just having the potential threat of it on a table, and on really quite a fast-moving unit, does make them a threat that the opponent can't really ignore. I know we need to see the rest of the Codex for a bit more context, but even with datasheet stuff alone, never mind any strength that the rest of it offers, it does look insanely strong. So anyway, let me know your thoughts. What do you make of the 2 new datasheets? It does look like it could be a good time for cavalry charges in Codex Astra Militarum. If you'd like to see more like this, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly do my best to keep up with any new guard leaks or rumours, and I'll review the Codex in full once it's out. Looking forward to getting some unit reviews done and some more in-depth videos on the Codex once we have a bit more of a complete picture. Finally, if you have been enjoying the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked down in the video description below if you're interested. The channel's Patreon page is what allows me to keep on making videos like this quite so regularly, so if you are enjoying a lot, then any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.